You can imagine the administration using this as a justification for something.
We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this. But following up on what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech.
Yeah, so that comment got him in some pretty big trouble. MSNBC quickly addressed how inappropriate it was, writing, quote, "During our breaking news coverage of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, Matthew Dode made comments that were inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable. We apologize for his statements, as has he. There is no place for violence in America, political or otherwise." And tonight, President Donald Trump also called out anyone making comments demonizing those who disagree with them politically.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible.
Charlie Kirk is dead, murdered in front of his own family. His wife is a widow now. His 2 kids under the age of 4 are going to have a gravesite instead of a father. Charlie Kirk never harmed anybody, but his life is over now. He was hunted down and publicly executed because he said words and had ideas that some don't like. You'll notice I didn't say some people, because I think, after yesterday, many denizens of the radical left have now forfeited the right to be called people, or regarded as human beings, because they aren't human beings. They are vile, ghoulish, evil, malevolent, demonic creatures who are incapable of even pretending to meet a basic standard of humanity. A lot of those creatures have Charlie Kirk's blood on their hands today. A lot of those creatures have been trying to get him killed for a long time. But before we get into large-scale recriminations, I want to first get into specific recriminations by saying MSNBC and CNN do not have the right to continue existing. And we need to stop treating those 2 outlets the same way that we've treated them previously, where we laugh at the idiotic things they say and use them for easy comedy fodder because they have been so far past the point of self-parody for so many years. The fact of the matter is, those 2 outlets have been engaging for a very long time now in the sort of rhetoric that was always going to get some prominent conservative killed. They almost got Donald Trump killed last year, and they were trying to get Donald Trump killed. You don't call a man fascist and literally Hitler and existential threat to our democracy day after day for months and years on end, unless you are trying to activate one of your foot soldiers to go and take a shot at him. And if they can't get Trump, Charlie Kirk was their number 2 target. We have known this. It's been obvious for quite some time. But now it's time for you and me, and all decent people of conscience who don't approve of political assassination, to do the work of making sure these ghouls at MSNBC and CNN aren't able to incite any more killings. It's Thursday, the 11th of September. This is Curmudgeon's Corner. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where it's time to put some rat bastard fake news sludge factories out of business, I won't say good afternoon because it's not a good afternoon. In fact, it's a pretty shitty afternoon. But welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner anyway. Now, let's name and shame some advertisers, shall we? MSNBC's 10 biggest sponsors are, in descending order, Progressive Insurance, Liberty Mutual, BitCarvey, Allstate Insurance, Wayfair.com, Humira, a pharmaceutical brand, Otezla, also a pharmaceutical brand, Chase Bank, Trulicity, and T-Mobile Wireless. CNN's 10 biggest sponsors are, in descending order, Progressive Insurance, Carvana.com, T-Mobile Wireless, the ASPCA, Wayfair.com, TD Ameritrade, Otezla, Liberty Mutual, Amazon, and Geico Insurance. If you do business with any of those companies, stop doing business with them right now, today, and tell them exactly why they don't get your business anymore. Tell them, your company will not see $1 from my household as long as you continue to partner with and facilitate the operations of fake news sludge factories that promote and foment acts of political violence and assassination. And you may also want to tell them that you are taking this action in honor of the memory of Charlie Kirk. If you are subscribed to any cable provider or streaming service that hosts MSNBC or CNN content, cancel your subscription right now, today, and send them the same message. It is time to deprive these evil, soulless bastards of the oxygen they breathe, and the oxygen they breathe is advertising dollars. It's time, in fact, it's way past time, to Bud Light these sons of bitches, and to Bud Light them good and hard. Charlie Kirk was 31 years old, the same age as my son. He will never have a 32nd birthday. He wasn't cut down in his prime. His prime hadn't even started yet. His prime was still 10 or 15 years off, but he was already one of the most effective communicators in the conservative space, and that is what got him marked for death. Because that is how the radical left operates. If they can't defeat you on a level playing field in an open exchange of opposing views, their next step, their only recourse, is to threaten and intimidate and ultimately to harm and kill you. Charlie's death hadn't even been confirmed yet before MSNBC and CNN, right on cue, began blaming him for his own murder. Which is really a great look, guys. When you do everything short of actually putting out a hit on somebody live on air, and then when some maniac goes and does the thing you have been implicitly prodding them to do, you turn right around and place 100% of the culpability for the act on the guy who just got fatally shot in the neck by one of your faithful viewers. Katie Tur on MSNBC, who is one of the most execrable creatures in the fake news ecosphere, she was the first to get in on the act, because of course she was, talking all about how Charlie Kirk is a divisive figure, a firebrand, a bomb thrower, terms that are only ever used by leftists to smear the character of prominent conservatives. Then she brings on Matthew Dowd, another uniquely execrable creature, who immediately starts playing the most disgusting, revolting form of the moral equivalency game, talking about, well, if you engage in violent rhetoric, then it might inspire violent actions. And if this sack of shit possessed a single shred of self-awareness, he might realize he is saying this on the very self-same network whose hosts and contributors and panelists have engaged in more violent rhetoric than any other network in world history. And all the usual suspects were at it within the first hour. Over on CNN, Van Jones, who likes to project the image of an urbane, erudite, level-headed analyst, but is actually just a Molotov cocktail-throwing racial and social arsonist, he played the same game as Matthew Dowd because I guess he didn't want to be outdone. Well, you know, when you engage in this sort of divisive rhetoric, then there might be consequences. And let's just be clear on this. Jesus Christ, did I just use the world's most annoying Obamaism? I must be flustered today. I know most of you who watch this channel are familiar with Charlie's work already, but in case there's anybody who isn't, he was not any of those things that these monstrous, calumnious cretins are accusing him of having been. He was, in point of fact, a respectful, well-mannered, well-spoken young man, always eager and willing to engage in a civil exchange of views with the non-like-minded, which is why he spent so much time on college and university campuses, which is where he ultimately lost his life. And there was nothing remotely extreme or radical about the contents of his political worldview. This guy was about as mainstream conservative as it gets. I've watched a hell of a lot of his content over the years, and I never heard him raise his voice or use any profane language. Even when he was having the most vicious forms of abuse screamed at him by the purple-haired, nose-ringed, pansexual gender studies majors with whom he so regularly engaged in the dens of moral and intellectual filth that we used to call centers of higher learning. But that didn't matter much in the end, did it? He was just too effective in his chosen field of professional endeavor, and so he had to be killed. And over on TikTok and Blue Sky, which I encourage you not to visit today if you want to retain any vestige of your faith in human decency, they are falling all over each other, dancing on his grave and gleefully celebrating the fact that he now has a widowed wife and 2 orphaned toddlers. If you didn't know any better, you would think they all just won the freaking lottery. They think Charlie got exactly what he deserved. And what was his crime exactly? What dastardly deeds did Charlie Kirk commit that it serves him right to have been publicly lynched in front of his family? Would any of his views have been considered extreme or even noteworthy? Or even particularly conservative a mere 10 or 15 years ago? No, they would not. 10 or 15 years ago, if you had gone to a college campus, set up a tent and some speakers, and said, "I don't think men can magically turn themselves into women," would it have attracted a crowd of pitchfork-wielding maniacs screaming abuse and baying for your blood? Would it have attracted any crowd at all? Not bloody likely, because 10 or 15 years ago, hardly anybody disagreed with that statement. If you'd gone to that same college campus and said, "I don't think a relationship between 2 homosexuals should be invested with the same legal status as a husband and a wife raising a traditional family," would it have caused a riotous, campus-wide disturbance that requires the local police to send in the SWAT team? Again, Not bloody likely, because 10 or 15 years ago, that was the majority view of most people in the country, Democrat, Republican, Independent, and otherwise. It will surprise you, I suspect, not very much at all, to learn that according to some reporting done early this morning by Steven Crowder's team, who apparently were sent some leaked internal DOJ communications, it appears, once again, that the killer was a radical trans activist. The suspected murder weapon has been recovered. It's a bolt-action Mauser 30-06, and because it's a bolt-action rifle, the casing from the single round that was fired was still in the chamber when the weapon was recovered, and this may have been an intentional act on the part of the killer because, drum roll please, the casing has trans activist and anti-fascist slogans etched upon its surface. I'm sure there will probably be additional reporting by the time this video goes live, and I'm sure it won't come from the mainstream fake news media because we have to do the reporting ourselves now, so good job and hat tip to Mr. Crowder and the Mug Club team. Hopefully the animal has been apprehended by the time you're watching this, and hopefully they capture the bastard alive so he can face a Utah firing squad. And sadly, that is the only form of justice that Charlie and his family can now hope for. And for whatever it's worth, we extend our deepest sympathies, and yes, thoughts and prayers to Mrs. Kirk and the children, and to Charlie's parents, who are now members of that most terrible of all fraternities, a fraternity of which I myself have been a member for 364 days now. I know Charlie was a man of deep Christian faith, who strove to put his faith into practice each day. I know he fervently believed that there is another, better existence that lies beyond this one. And if that's true, and if a life well lived is the price of admission, then I have no doubt that's where he is now. I'm done, that's all I've got. See you next time. Get off my lawn.